Hey, what's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm going to be talking about Shadowhunters Episode 8. So Shadowhunters Episode 8, I really loved the first half. Like, I was so ready to say that this is my favorite episode of Shadowhunters, ever. I was in love with everything that happened for the first 30 or 40 minutes of the episode. The second half, or the last 20 minutes, I just wasn't as interested in. The episode kind of lost its novelty to me. Not to say that it was bad, it just was not as exciting as the first half. Second half was still really good, and I do think this is one of the more stronger episodes. Shadowhunters still being more and more consistent with the show. Everything feels like a part of Shadowhunters, a TV show, even if it differs from the book content, and I really like what they're doing with it. So that's really it for the non-spoilers. I don't even really think I need to do a spoiler warning anymore, we're gonna talk about the episode. Okay, so the first thing I noticed about the episode is we have this developing relationship between Izzy and Raphael. I thought it was really interesting because this is not a relationship that has any development in the books whatsoever. I was really excited for this because Raphael in the books has really been come to known as this individual who is kind of like a voice of reason or logic. Izzy has kind of been bouncing around with the different people who either notice her addiction or talk about it some way with her. It starts with the Iron Sisters who let her know that it's vampire venom. Then she goes to Simon in search of the vampire venom. She has a little conversation with Magnus about it. She almost gets caught by that random Shadowhunter, and then she goes directly to the vampire clan and finally ends with Raphael. And I'm like, awesome! This is the part where we're really going to see her try and get help for it. Unfortunately, Raphael becomes an enabler. I am very disappointed in this. I understand Raphael is a vampire. If Izzy is going to cut her arm in front of him, it's really difficult for him to resist that. But he says, originally, you need to sweat it out, and then he gives in to her and actually gives her the bite that she was asking for. I was really hoping this would be the moment of truth where Izzy really tried to overcome this, but instead, the character who I thought was going to really help her is actually forwarding her addiction, and that was really disappointing for me. Max is back, which I'm really excited about because he disappeared for 8 episodes with not a single mention. I definitely hope with them reincorporating Max's character, he actually plays an active role in the show and they don't just kind of push him off to the side. I really like that first Malik scene where Alec goes up to Magnus and is like, how do you feel about throwing a party? And Magnus is like, have you met me? They have this really nice conversation about how, yes, Alec does want it to be about him meeting Max, about him getting to know his family more. He also wants it to be a statement of recognition of their relationship to Maris. And I thought that scene was executed so flawlessly. Pretty much all the Malik scenes are really good this season, and I am living for it. In addition to Max, we get another character who's being reintroduced, and that is Iris. Now, I think we all knew that the first episode with Iris was not going to be the last. She ends her part in that episode with, you still owe me a favor to Clary, so we all knew she was coming back. And so this is the reason why I don't like it when TV shows have a really long recap in the beginning of an episode before going into the newer episode, because it spoils what's coming. The storyline with Iris was episode 4 or 5, and so since then we haven't had any mention of her, but at the very beginning of this episode we get a flashback to that episode and I'm like, oh well, this is the episode she's coming back, so it ruins the surprise. But I have to say, I do like how Valentine is manipulating her into kind of working for him. I guess we'll see if that relationship continues because Magnus sent her off to the Clave. But I just loved the line when Iris realized that Madsy is threatened and she says, I will do anything you say, and Valentine is just like, yes, you will. So, in this episode, Simon reveals his feelings to Clary. I think we all saw this coming. It was getting stronger every episode, but I don't know if anyone saw Clary's reaction coming because I sure as hell did not. I have to say, while I hated Kleiman in the books, I really do ship Kleiman in the show now, and I have to just give a round of applause to the showrunners for being able to change my view on something with the way they're interpreting it. I think it's really interesting. It's a little difficult for me because I loved the way that Clary and Simon's relationship was sprayed out through the story. I loved the events of the story in the scene right before Simon opens up to Clary about her feelings, and I like how she doesn't immediately reciprocate them. But I also like how it went in the show, and I think that's a really great thing. Another great scene with Matt is, of course, his scenes with Maris, which I have talked about before. I always love how Alec is so ready to confront Maris about his issues with her. It's a nice change from the books because book Alec is always so afraid of his parents' reaction, but in the show he has much more confidence and he's able to really speak up for himself and the others he cares about, and I thought it was really well done. One really funny moment was when Magnus and Jace were talking about how Alec and Magnus had sex, and they basically did confirm it in this episode, but I love how when Jace is like, I knew, Magnus is like, I guess he thought that Parabatai could recognize when the other was engaged in sexual intercourse. And I just thought that was a really funny moment. Another big change from the books that I'm kind of pleased with is how Jace is very accepting of Clary and Simon immediately. Book Jace would have been like, hell to the nah. But in the show, he's like, I think congratulations is in order. I'm very happy for you. And it feels very genuine. In the back of my mind, I still want him to be jealous, but it's coming across very nicely in the show, and it's consistent with Jace and Clary's relationship at the moment. So I really, really like that. So at this point, shit starts getting real. We have this moment where Clary sees Simon and Maya kissing right after Simon and Clary have just gotten together. I have to say my first thought was, isn't it just last week that Simon was too cool for that? Sorry, I had to. But this is the point where I was like, I am really living for this episode. We get more conversation between Izzy and Raphael says very kindly, you're the strongest shadow hunter I know, and Izzy comes forward and is like, I'm not. Everyone thinks I am, but I'm not. I thought that was a very vulnerable moment for Izzy. I love seeing those parts of her character, and again, it was nice to see a little bit more development on Isabel and Raphael's relationship. So then we delve into the conflict of Mayrus and Jace. Mayrus tries to kill Jace, and we're like, what the fuck is going on? This episode was very, very entertaining, and it kept me guessing all throughout, which I loved. I think in the first half of this episode, what they were trying to do with these hallucinations came across perfectly. So around this time, Magnus starts realizing what is going on, that people are seeing things and experiencing things that aren't really happening, and he concludes that everyone's hallucinating. And I really like how he touches on the fact that they're hallucinating things that have to do with their certain insecurities, and I feel like that was executed so perfectly on screen. You know, you have Clary, who has recently made herself very vulnerable to Simon, and she's starting to feel things for the first time since Jace, and then that's taken away from her. We have Jace, whose biggest desire at the moment is to be accepted by this woman he's come to know as a mother, but he believes that she thinks that he's a demon, and so it manifests in that way. And then we have Alec, who is dealing with this immense guilt for being possessed and killing Jocelyn, and I thought it was done really, really well. Like, I was really, really impressed with Shadowhunters with the way they kind of made things subtle while at the same time expressing them really well. Like, it was a really well done episode for the most part. So unfortunately, as we are starting to figure everything out, this episode went a little bit downhill for me, just like a little bit. It wasn't bad, I just was not as entertained or as interested as I was in that first half, and because I was loving it so much and the second half wasn't as great in my opinion, it definitely lessened the enjoyment, I think, just because like I was like, wow, this episode's great, if that makes sense. Like, we get to the point where everyone is hallucinating and everyone's arguing and yelling over each other, and it just felt like so teenage drama. In the process, Magnus loses his spell book, and as he's talking about all the things that could happen in like every different language, he says champagne noir. So as soon as he says this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I guess the wine that Mayrus gave Magnus was spiked. This was something I was toying with throughout the episode, and I was like, wow, that's like such a great leeway. But it's like this ancient French dialect, and so about in a second, Magnus goes from thinking about all the different spells he's ever created in all these different languages, he picks up on champagne noir for some reason and immediately relates it to the red cat that he found on his porch this morning. I guess the intention was to relate this ancient French dialect to him saying salut mon petit chat, which means hello my little cat, which he also said in French for no apparent reason. And then by making the connection that this red cat has something to do with champagne noir, he relates it to one of the thousands of warlocks he has met who used to cast spells in that language. The logic part of that reveal made no sense to me. It was so far-fetched in my opinion, and I felt they could have just made it so much easier by saying that I respect the wine without Mayrus knowing. That was probably my least favorite part of the episode, because I was just like, what? So then we're ending the episode. We find out that Valentine is coming after Clary because she apparently has pure angel blood and can be used to activate the soul sword. I really hate how they're using the word pure to describe Jace having pure demon blood and Clary having pure angel blood. It just makes no sense because Shadowhunters have half human blood and half angel blood. Clary obviously still has to have some human blood to be a Shadowhunter. It just makes no sense to me. It would have been so much easier if they just said she has extra angel blood. It's not that hard. But I do like at the end of the episode, we have this scene with Simon and Clary where he's like, in light of all of this, I want to spend every waking moment with you, and they kiss, and then a few minutes later we have Jace who is like, yeah, Valentine's coming after you and I'm never going to let you out of my sight. I'm a little torn with that quote from Jace because I cannot tell if it has a romantic inclination or if it's meant to represent them as siblings and him being protective. I really wanted to have something to do with his romantic feelings for Clary, but it was very unclear, and I think it's interesting that it was unclear. But then we end the episode with Mayrus opening up about the fact that Robert is cheating on her. I don't know how to feel about this this reveal. My first thing is I hate how they have completely flipped it from the books, where apparently in the show you can't tell Isabel because she couldn't handle it, whereas in the books Isabel is the only one who knows. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but I just feel like it wasn't expressed clearly. In the books, Robert had cheated on Maris a long time ago, and the reason they stayed together was because Max was being born. They stayed together all of these years because of Max, and they haven't made it clear if this is something recent that Robert has been doing, because they said, is he cheating on you like presently? And Maris started crying, so I'd assume that he's currently cheating on her. I'm not explaining this well. I like that they kept in this plot line. I just don't exactly like what they're doing with it at the moment. I'm assuming they're planning some big reveal for Isabel to find out, and she'll get really upset, but we'll see about that. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I do feel like it's one of the stronger ones, as I said. Like, just every episode, Shadowhunters is improving on little things, and it's just making an overall better viewing experience for me, which I am so happy about. Please feel free to leave your thoughts on this episode in the comments of this video, because I would love to discuss it with you guys. But that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye!